I hate suffering. I've suffered myself, and so I hate to see anybody suffer. And so I'm unbelievably driven to end suffering where I can to help anyone do that, whether it be hunger or emotional hunger or depression or sadness or relationship or I don't know what it is. I love human beings. I hate suffering and I love to see when somebody awakens to who they are. And we all are so much more than we ever, perceive ourselves to be. But many times you don't discover that until you have to. I like to try and show people how to do it so they have to wait till life hits them. Anything you can imagine, we're all going to go through extreme stress in our lives, but how do you use stress or does stress use you? And so my whole thing is help people, show them how to use stress, because I don't care how good a person you are. I don't care how spiritual or religious you are. I don't care how smart you are, how rich you think you are. Every human being is going to go through extreme stress multiple times in their life. And the real question is, what are you going to do with it? And the first thing is, if you're going through hell, keep going. But if you keep going, you discover, number one, how strong you really are. Because if you don't give up, you'll discover who you are. The second thing you find out is who your real friends are, because when things aren't so great, you get to see who those are. And then third, it almost gives you like an inoculation to future stress. Because I had a friend that was shot down in Vietnam and was in a prison there for 7 years in solitary confinement. And Captain Coffey's his name. And I remember I met him later in life, and he was going through this tough thing with the IRS, and it was so unfair. It took him 3 years. He got his money back. But I said, doesn't that drive you crazy? He goes, after I've been with the North Vietnamese, he goes, what could the IRS do to me? So I think those pieces are there, but everyone gets called on the journey. Most people try to resist it, but that journey, that's what the call is. It's a call to grow. So I'm big on change your story, change your life. And I'm big on understanding the narrative of where you are in the story of your life, because if you understand where you are, it gives context, it gives meaning, and it doesn't make you feel overwhelmed. I'm a good human being, and I think I still help people, but what I'm providing 62 billion meals working around the clock on top of, my 114 companies and all that? No, I don't think I would. And that hunger comes very often from pain, but pain's not enough to keep you going. Pain only goes so far. You've got to find something that, it's like I tell people there's two types of motivation, right? There's push motivation. You're making something happen. And I have enormous willpower. I'm sure you do. Most of the people we probably interact with have great willpower, right? But there's still a limit to it. There's no limit to pull motivation. Pull is there's something so magnificent you want to serve, something that you care about more than yourself. That's where all the energy in life comes from. You know what's in your heart and your soul, what wakes you up in the morning and makes you go. And I think if I hadn't had the pain, I don't think I would have been sensitized. But I also, if I hadn't felt the pleasure of serving and seeing impact on such a large scale, then, you'd be limited. Because listen, meeting your own needs is not that hard. My biggest beef with right now since COVID is this whole self-care revolution we've got. You got to take care of yourself. Don't get me wrong. I take care of myself. And, you get weaker and weaker the more you focus on yourself. The human mind is always going to figure out something that isn't good enough. But when you're serving, you're not there. Your mind's not there. You're with the people. You're with what you're doing. And it's the escape from the mind's reductionism. And so I really believe that the secret to life is to find something you care about more than yourself that gives you that pull motivation. And then you're never going to lack for energy. You're never going to lack for passion. You're never going to lack for anything. And you're going to have a life that's extremely meaningful. It's not happy every moment. It's not meant to be. If you smile, have you ever smiled so much your face hurt? Yeah. We need variety. But meaning, that's something you can find no matter what. And then my wife's been a huge help in that also. When I met her, I was like, I'm a serious mofo. I want to change the world. I work 20-hour days and stuff. I want to laugh more. Some days I wish I hadn't said that to her because she's so crazy. But she's one of the great gifts of my life. And I surround myself with so many brilliant and funny people that my life has, the joy and the achievement. I remember when I met my trainer, Billy, years ago. He's one of my dearest friends. And he's brilliant. And he said, what do you really want out of your training? He goes, because what I find is I don't know why you even need me. He goes, no one needs to push you. I got to push you back. I got to stop you from going that hard. He goes, I said, no, I'm not looking for motivation. I said, I want to be specific. I want to produce very precise results. But I said, at this point, I think I've been working out like a crazy person. I suppress my oxygen. You saw what I do. It's just ridiculous. I'm a biohacker, right? I have to be. I got to go on stage and do 12 to 13 hours and hold 13, 14, 15, 20,000 people's attention for 4 days, right? When they won't sit for a 3-hour movie somebody spent $300 million on, It takes a level of energy. I'm not just standing there talking. I'm running up the side. I'm doing these things. So I said, I don't want to give up any of that. I need that power in me to be able to produce. But I said, I want to have fun. He says, what does that look like? And I said, well, I don't know. I think, when I was a kid, I used to play racquetball. I said, maybe for the aerobic, instead of just running, maybe we'd, do something that's fun to do. And he goes, that's great, let's do it. So we called around, no racquetball courts anywhere, but squash. Squash is awesome, and it's more strategic and a hell of a lot better exercise than, racquetball is. So I got into playing squash, and it was like, wow, it added a whole nother dimension. And then that led to, at this stage, if I go someplace and I'm going to be kind, which I want to be, it's not a 20-minute drive and 20-minute back. It's 20 minutes, in and out. I'm sure pictures and, just connecting with people and taking care of them. And so, man, I don't have time for this. So that's how this happened down here. So it's like, I came here and said, listen, we're going to build this. But it's just like, so I built this whole place for fun. So when we come to build this place, I said, the guy's saying to me, you got 25,000 square feet. You've used up all the space. Where are you going to do this? I said, down here. And he goes, what do you mean down here? I said, below the surface. He goes, no. The ocean's here. The intercoastal's here. You're below the water table. I said, well, have you ever been to Scripps Oceanography? You ever been to, the Atlantis Hotel? I said, yeah. I said, that's what we're going to do. He's like, oh, it can't be done. I said, what do you mean it can't be done? Other people have done it. He goes, well, you never get approved. I said, the mayor here, we're good friends, I'm sure. People in the community like it, we'll get approved. And so it leads to a place of fun. We're sitting in the place of fun. We've got 7,000 square feet below the surface. No one knows it's here. It's below the water. We built like a submarine around the outside of this. And so we got squash courts and my bowling alley and all the stuff for my kids and my grandkids, and it's the play area. So I think it's also important to have environments that call out the play and environments that are convenient to pull out the play. You can live by the ocean. I used to live on the hill in Del Mar, California, and almost never went to the beach except when friends came and wanted to take them there. When you live on the beach, I'm on the beach every day. It's there. So it's like you can engineer your life to have more happiness. But I think the real challenge is thinking so hardly about being taken seriously just represents your fears, right? It's like, I think spiritual development, when people talk about spiritual, not religious development, spiritual development is the level of comfort you can have with just being your real self. And I think that's not an easy task because we all are trying to be something, but we already are that something we're trying to be. That doesn't mean you can't be better, but it's like accepting and appreciating what you really are, and instead of projecting, something else, takes a lot of pain out of your body, takes a lot of wasted energy out. It gets a lot of fears to just disappear. And I don't have an easy path for that. I think it's the hero's journey. What is it? Your life is ordinary and everything seems fine, and then something hits you and it's the call to adventure. It doesn't feel like a call. It feels like somebody in your family's got cancer. It feels like, COVID and somebody shut down your business, or, some issue that's happening in your relationship with your kids. But if you take the call and you go on the journey, you're going to meet some new friends. You're going to find some new mentors. You're going to battle with internal things within you and external things. But if you keep going, you're going to eventually slay your dragons and you come out the hero of your own life, and you have something to share it's not something you read somewhere. It's something you've lived.
Something you want.
And everybody can feel you've lived it because it's a different level of ownership, And then, by the way, as soon as you do that, it happens again. You're called on another journey. You have a new level of challenge that you need to go on. It just never ends, but it makes life really, really beautiful. I think it's important to realize wherever focus goes, energy flows. It's corny, but it's true, right? In fact, maybe an easier way of saying it is we don't experience life. None of us do. We experience the life we focus on. So in any moment, what's wrong is always available. So is what's right. So it's not about being positive. It's about being intelligent, right? When you're in a totally negative state and the world's going to end, and there are people like believing that in the next 12 years, the entire environment's going to collapse and they won't have a child. You got to look at the impact of what you're believing. And you got to look at and say, where's my focus going? I can always be upset about something. I can always find something to be joyous or at least grateful for, which leads to joy. And I think it's having that, learning to discipline your disappointments, not allow them to grow and to move on and to use whatever life has given you. But to me, it's like, I think there's 3 decisions that people make every moment of their life. Now, I'm not saying they make them consciously. If you make them unconsciously, you have the same patterns over and over again. And usually they're not good ones, right? Sometimes they're good, but not usually. These are the 3 decisions that I think everyone makes every moment. First, you're doing it right now. What are you going to focus on? You're going to be focusing on my story I'm telling you. You're going to be focusing on the next question you're going to ask. You're going to be focusing on how your stomach feels if you've not eaten. There's a million things you could focus on, literally. But we don't experience life. We experience the part of life we focus on. And so the bottom line is, I know my father and I had a different experience because we had different focuses that day. I was focused on his food. What a concept. This is cool. He was focused on that he had not taken care of his family. And I know that because, he said it about 20 times under his breath, and my mother echoed it, of course. The second decision, though, the minute you focus on something, your brain has to decide, what does it mean? And meaning is what creates emotion, and emotion is where your life is, right? And so the quality of your life is the quality of your emotions. If you got $1 billion and every day you're pissed off and angry, your life's quality is called pissed off and angry. If you got 3 beautiful children, a husband or wife you love, but you worry all the time, your life is worry, So his focus and then his meaning, that was the worst part. The meaning he gave it was that he was worthless and didn't belong here. And that usually leads to the third decision, which is, what are you going to do? And like, if the meaning is something happens, you say this person is dissing me, disrespecting me, or is this person challenging me, or is this person coaching me, or is this person loving me? If you think they're dissing you, you're going to have a very different emotional reaction than if you think they're coaching you or loving you. And then, of course, that's going to change what decision you make. Because if you're angry, you're going to make a different decision than if you're playful or generous or whatever the case may be. So those 3 decisions control our lives. But so your viewers or listeners, I give them an opportunity to take a look at it, because there's some patterns that you can make some simple patterns and change your whole life, a focus. So the first one is, and I'd ask you 2 questions for you. One, Chris, is, what do you think most people's answer to this question is? And the other is, what's yours, if you're ready to play, all right? It's real simple. We all have a pattern of focusing on what we have and at times on what's missing. It isn't something that comes, the focus on what's missing is not something that comes with someone who is a failure. It comes very much with people who are very successful. And the question then becomes, if you're always focused on missing, how can you sustain happiness? So scarcity is there. So you'll have drive, right, to keep staying on the hamster wheel of achievement, but you're not going to see much fulfillment, not in a sustainable way. It's impossible. It has nothing to do with you or me, right? It's just software. And we got a soul. We're not software, but you run your software so often, you start thinking your mind is you versus my mind is a tool that I'm going to use, or if I don't use it, it's going to use me. So the majority of people do that. And by the way, during COVID, that number exploded because so many things were taken from people. They were constantly focused on what's missing, and that produces nothing but pain. Second question, and I think I know your answer to this one, which do you tend to focus on more? What do you think most people focus on more, what they can control or what they can't control? So, but most people, you're absolutely right. Now, in my seminars, it's different because I got 15, 20,000 people ask that question, and the vast majority of them say they're focused on what's missing, but the vast majority of them say they do focus on what they can control. That's why they came. Why would they spend their money and time? They want to take control of their business or their body or their relationship, whatever the case may be. So they have a different belief structure. If you have both of those out of whack, you got some real challenges. Most people have at least one out of whack, which creates stress. And then the third one, and there's many more than these, but just quickie for the people at home, and I'm asking them to do this for themselves if they want to. Where do you tend to focus more? Your past, your present, or your future? We all spend all 3, but where do you spend more of your time? Where do you think most people do? Where do you? And that's where most achievers live. Me too. I have to discipline myself not to do that, because what makes you an achiever is anticipation. You've learned by a long time, anticipation is power. As I'm listening, I'm watching you. You're anticipating. You're processing, right?
Dopamine's a hell of a drug, yeah.
Yes, it does. And it gives you a sense of control. And there's, also, if you don't anticipate, it's like playing a video game against a child. Now, you're a different generation, so you might kick the child's ass. I don't know. But my generation, I didn't play any video games. So if a child, is your nephew or your niece or your grandson, granddaughter, or your son or daughter, and you give them a gift, let's say, of playing a video game, you give them a new video game for Christmas or their birthday, what's the first thing to do? Oh, come play with me, Pops. Come play with me, Uncle. Come play. No, I don't do those things. Oh, let me show you. It's so easy. Boom, 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 boom. 3 shots, boom, boom. They're going great. So some part of you finally says, I'll show this little something here. I'll go ahead and do this thing here. All right, fine. Give me this thing. But you should know you're being set up when the kid says something to you like, you go first, right? And so you go and you go, boom, 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 and you're dead in 4 seconds, right? The kid goes, not bad for the first time, right? And then they take the ba-dum, 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 and 45 minutes later, you get your second turn, right? Now you're really pissed. Maybe you make it 2 minutes, and the kid goes for another 45. Why does the kid win every time? Is it because they're smarter, faster, younger? No, it's because they played this game before.